in front of the camera.
Oh.
Your turn.
Good morning, Daddy.
Good morning.
Good morning, viewers. Say good morning. Good morning. So we're finished with the camper.
Yeah.
We're finished with the camper. So we decided to do a final video with all of the tools that we used and some lessons that we've learned from the build and pass those along to you.
Trips. And
Tips, tricks, and tribulations.
And trips.
Trips. Trips.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we just have a lot of notes.
Well, I guess we start with a note.
Alright.
You read one, I read one.
Okay, so one of our first lessons learned was in the instructions book, it says to round the edges of your pieces. You're going to want to round them a lot more than you expect to for the fiberglass.
That way the fiberglass lays flat when you resin it on.
Because it does not like sharp corners at all.
Yeah, you'll get air bubbles.
Air bubbles, lots of air bubbles.
We don't like air bubbles.
Alright.
Okay, if you are new to woodworking, suggest have someone with experience help you. I has no experience.
Oh. Was I the one helping you?
Yes.
Well, I don't know about that. I think Dad was the one helping me.
No.
So yeah, have someone with experience help you.
If you don't have anybody with experience, YouTube is a great resource to look at how things fit, how to put things together, how to affix things together. I've learned a lot just watching people refit sailing boats and different kinds of woodworking tricks. So
How to use tools.
Yeah.
If you're not sure how to use a router, for example, look it up on YouTube. There's lots of people that'll teach you how to use a router on YouTube.
There are.
Yeah. So.
And use actual screwdrivers, don't use butter knives. I know a lot of people that will use a butter knife for a screwdriver and a pair of channel locks for a hammer.
Why are you calling me out like that? What did I do to you?
I'm not calling you out. Your turn.
Okay. So Dad asked that I write this one down, which is accept your work partner's abilities, limits, and work as a team. Consensus in projects is necessary. You want to make sure that you're both on the same page when you're working on a project together, because otherwise you'll end up frustrating one another when you're not working in the same place.
Yeah. Well, you got to have respect for each other.
Yeah.
And like my brother says, it's a shame to have two minds available to use and only use one of them. So there's been a lot of things that she's seen that I didn't see that way. It turns out we're a better way to do than what I was originally thinking. Break the project into pieces. Make it manageable. Plans of attack. Read instruction thoroughly before starting. You laugh.
We mostly did that. We sort of did that.
Yeah.
We started out doing that.
Yeah. The instructions really is probably the best place to gain an understanding of what the project's going to require you to do. You know, they're not destructions, they're instructions. So, you know, we would sit down and a lot of the hours that we marked, we also had several hours that we were sitting down and looking through the book and looking and examining and studying how to do something before we ever attempted it.
Yeah, like, for example, Dad was really concerned about how the eyebrows were going to go onto the side of the camper, and we sat and looked at the book a lot before, and we actually came out and like played with the pieces before we ever started attaching anything or doing any filming.
A dry fitting is a really good tool.
Yes, so we did that a lot. So we also, another thing we wrote down was to keep the project work in time frames that fit your tolerance. Being tired makes you make mistakes. 3 to 5 hours worked for us.
Yeah.
So.
And we worked once a week. We weren't in a hurry to try to complete this project in 2 weeks. So we took our time and we really enjoyed the work and the company and the music and the cutting up. And
what cutting up? That never happened.
It didn't cut up.
No, it didn't cut up.
Okay.
So-
Have fun.
Have fun.
Have fun.
Have fun. If you're gonna do it, have fun.
Yeah.
It is a really fun, it's a challenging, fun project, I think.
Yeah.
So,
As far as construction tips, have a work area large enough for you to set up 2 workstations. Okay, one where you're actually working on the camper, whatever part of the camper you're working on, and also one for a work table. And the book says you need 4, 5, 6 sawhorses and this, that, and the other. We found we really didn't need that, but what we did need was 2 sawhorses that we could set up a full sheet of plywood, 4x8, and cover it with plastic that you could use as a work surface. And one of the rules that we tried to adhere to and failed at was putting things back where they belong. You have seen us wander around on camera, back and forth, back and forth.
where's the rasp?
Where's the rasp? And
Where's the heat gun?
somebody put it down somewhere, not where it belonged. So,
Put things back in their home as you're working. Okay. Have a home for your tools and supplies and put them back. That's actually on the list here.
your turn.
Okay. The other thing is I suggest using Ziploc bags or resealable bags. I think any type of resealable bag will work, but use the right kind. You don't want the ones that have the expanding bottoms on them because you need it to be a pointy tip. So make sure you get the right kind of baggies to fill with the wood fillet.
Yep.
So.
Okay. Compare your fillet peanut butter consistency against actual peanut butter.
Do not.
Do not eat it.
You can eat the peanut butter. Don't eat the fillet.
No. And that's one thing we found, that if you make your wood fillet a little loose or a little runny, it becomes a.
Right, go ahead.
If you make your wood fillet, or your, what is it, the other stuff?
Cellophil.
Cellophil. If you make it too runny, then it's really a mess to deal with and a mess to clean up.
It dribbles everywhere.
Yeah.
And if you make it too thick, you can't pipe it out of the bag.
Yeah.
Oh.
So.
Oh, yeah, this is an important one. Make sure you clean up at the end of the day. So, like, clean off your tools, clean off your paintbrushes, throw away the garbage. It makes it a lot easier the next time you come in to work. If you've already cleaned up the time before, you don't have to come in and spend an hour picking up before you can get started.
We've already covered this, but I'll bring it up again. Dry fit pieces before you actually try to install them. Make sure they're going to fit. Make sure that if one thing goes in and something's going in behind it, or a little while later, go ahead and make sure that that piece is going to fit, even though you're installing the bulkhead in first. The galley flap will need to fit within the camper as well. So
Yeah, we ran into problems with that where I think we ended up with the galley wall not being quite 90 degrees. It was slightly tilted or something one way or the other. And so the galley flat was sticking out too far and wouldn't fit inside the camper. So,
about a quarter of an inch.
Yeah.
So we had to adjust it with the table saw.
yeah, not seen here, table saw. Oh, this one's important. Mix your epoxy in small quantities, less waste. Epoxy is very expensive, like
Oh yeah.
very expensive. It's,
If you got to order more, then you're going to understand what she's talking about.
yeah, it's very expensive.
And believe me, if you mix up a big batch in a pot, if it's all together like that in a pot, it's going to kick real quick. And smaller batches, it doesn't kick as fast, and you have a little bit longer work time.
And it gets hot
Yeah.
quickly in big batches.
And if you're working in the middle of the summer and you have your epoxy stored outside in the garage, the ingredients are already hot to start with. So this creates a problem. And if it's in the winter and you don't have it warm enough, then getting it to kick is an issue.
Yeah.
So
Store your epoxy inside in your house. somewhere.
Let's see, we've covered that one too, about
Oh, yeah, yeah.
using YouTube as a source for information.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, this one's yours because that you, not me.
Always pull your hair up. If you have long hair, always pull your hair up.
You don't like the epoxy do?
I did not really like the epoxy do. No, not so much. Or the spray adhesive do from putting the insulation on the inside. That was...
You should have pumped out, had to.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Also, wear clothes that you don't care if they get epoxy on them or messed up or cut or scratched or whatever. I mean, we've seen in the videos that people put on tie-back suits and this, that, and the other, and we didn't see a need in it. Probably should have at points, but
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but always wear your personal protective equipment. Work in a well-ventilated area when you're sanding, and make sure you clean up the dust. That was a big deal. Even sawdust is not really good for your lungs, but especially sanding dust from epoxy and fiberglass is really bad for your lungs. So
yeah, and also eye protection. And that stuff will just irritate the mess out of you.
Yeah, make your eyes hurt.
So if you sand away the CNC marks on the doors, hatches after cutting them out, you get a neat gap around the pieces. So the CNC marks where they have marked for you to cut the doors and the windows
dashed lines.
And the little dash lines. If you cut down the center of those with whatever you're using, a jigsaw, a coping saw, or whatever, you're going to need to sand those tips that are left off, and this creates a nice smooth door finish edge and a door frame edge that leaves a perfect gap for putting the doors in.
Where were we? Oh, so if you're working on small pieces that need to be sanded or drilled, clamp them onto a bigger piece of wood so they don't move away from you.
Oh, you don't like playing catch the spinning thing?
I don't really like playing catch the spinning things, no.
Okay. Okay. You've seen us, we taped around the doors on the panels and around the door frames, and then we used a jigsaw to cut them out. And then we finally got smart, too late, and we realized, well, if we put the painter's tape on the bottom of the jigsaw, I don't have to use so much tape as a protective barrier.
Pro move.
Pro move.
Pro move. Tape the jigsaw, not the camper.
Yeah.
Okay, so here was a big idea that we had. We're not sure if it would work, but we think it might avoid some issues in the future for other people building their camper. Go ahead and install the hinges before you cut the doors out. So cut the gap where the hinges cover. Cut that so that you don't have to try to cut underneath the hinges later. But go ahead and cut that. Install the hinges.
Put them together first.
Put them together, install the hinges, glue them in and everything. And then cut the doors out the rest of the way. We found, even though we cut the doors out and then we dry fit the hinges and installed the hinges with the doors in the frames and everything, we found afterwards that things still were not quite lining up quite right. So we think if you go ahead and install the hinges before you cut the doors out, that's where they live.
Yeah.
It should.
And that way when you put the doors back in later, the hinge and everything is already in the correct spot for the door to work properly.
Yep.
But try it. I mean, this is we're not telling you to do this, or it's just a suggestion.
Just a suggestion.
And we will really be interested in how it works for you.
Yeah.
After the exterior fiberglass, cut along side seams of the galley lid with a razor knife. it should only have fiberglass on the outside. Now you seen me use that coping saw to try to cut that galley lid out, and realistically it should have been just a razor knife to cut the fiberglass bond with the two pieces. So it's just to point out that, hey, we ran into this, and it was a little bit of a frustration. And
so if you cut that with a razor knife before the fiberglass and the epoxy is fully cured, you actually can, like, if you could let it get to kind of a tacky, like semi-soft, flexible consistency, you can actually take a razor knife and just cut and clean up. Like the same thing with fiberglassing the eyebrows, too, that we could just trim the fiberglass off the edges of the eyebrows with a razor knife.
That was surprising easier than we thought it would be. The eyebrows were.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had a lot of comments when we did the hatch for the fan on the roof about how easy it looked like it was. There are holes pre-drilled up there to fit with copper wire. Go ahead and wire it in with copper wire. It made it so much easier to get it lined up. I mean, it was...
And in place, and it stayed.
It was super easy. I was kind of dreading that part because the book made it look hard, but the copper wire made it really easy. So just wire it in.
Another tip is you can go to the big box store and you can buy all of these measuring cups for measuring resins, and 2-to-1 and 5-to-1 and all these measurements on it. The pumps that come with the resin and hardener are set up to dispense exactly what you need. So we found that we had friends and everybody that had thousands of plastic cups,
Restaurant cups
that you could pump in 2, 3, 4, whatever you needed for a small amount, mix, and
just throw it away.
Just throw it away. And the other thing about it is even though the things are 8 inches, 9 inches tall, you can cut them in half and only have a small cup that you're dealing with and you're working out of.
We learned that a little late.
Yeah.
We thought of that a little late, was to cut the cups down in half.
Yeah.
So there was one on there that we missed.
We missed one?
Yeah. So when we were working on fitting the galley gutter trim around the back edge of the galley, it did not want to sit flat in the middle no matter what we did. We tried sanding, we tried everything we could to get that thing to fit in there, and finally we just cut it on the angles.
Yeah.
And it fit perfect after that. I feel like we could have saved ourselves a lot of tribulation, aggravation, if we had just realized, let's just stop trying to
bend it, and bow it, and make it take form.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you cut it at the corners,
it lines up with the seams on the back of the camper anyway.
And the sides, and things fall into place. Then you can use a bit of fiberglass to reinforce that joint. So that worked really well.
It really did. It worked well. So definitely recommend, if you're having trouble fitting that piece, just go ahead and cut it.
Now on the hinges, I drilled and filled with epoxy and then re-drilled the hinge holes for the bolts. So if you set up on a drill press.
Also not pictured?
No, not pictured. But you need to find the center of these holes first and then drill them out. Remember, you've got 8 hinges that go on the frame, 4 hinges, 2 for each door, and then the galley hinges. So each one of those hinge sets, you'll have to work individually, and then you can drill them, fill them with epoxy or cellophane, and then re-drill the holes for the bolts. Or you don't really have to.
Yeah, so this was not a step that was recommended in the book, but we figured.
We did it, and since you see us on the camera doing it.
Yeah, we figured since.
We talk about it.
We talk about it because you saw us do it.
All right, your turn.
If you use tape to mark edges before you're using resin, don't leave the tape on. Pull the tape off. You probably saw us struggling a little bit with getting the tape off the top of the camper after we had resined the
Galley.
the
Flange.
vent.
Yeah, vent flange.
Yeah,
or
the bezel
mount.
for the vent on the
Yeah.
roof. Trying to get that tape off because we left it on too long. Go ahead and pull the tape off after it's kind of
Yeah.
when it gets that semi-flexible stage. Yeah. Where did we get?
We got it right here.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Once you start getting the bottom attached to the shell, the camper becomes a little bit unruly to work around and work with and so forth and so on.
It's kind of heavy,
Yeah.
bulky.
So I took some furniture dollies and used some scrap lumber.
Also not pictured.
Yeah, and strapped them together, and we set the camper bottom side down on the furniture dolly so we could roll it around, move it around, turn it, twist it. You've probably seen it moving a lot, and that really helped. Another thing that really helped was the boxes that all the supplies came in, the flat packs and all that. We busted them open, taped them together, and made a floor covering on the floor to kind of protect the garage floor from resin overfill and so forth and so on.
Yeah, it makes a big mess. The epoxy makes a big mess, especially when you're trying to fiberglass. It drips everywhere, so make sure you protect your floors.
Yeah. And another thing you've probably seen us do is I took some old couch cushions and pulled the fabric off of them, and it's got this great big old pads, and this is pretty good.
Yeah.
So got those that you can use to roll the camper upside down on when you're working on the bottom after you've taken it out of the frame. Mm-hmm. And also butcher paper or painter's paper, the brown paper that comes in a roll from the big box store. This is really handy to help mask off and work different parts of the job.
Yeah.
Your turn.
Okay. Oh, yeah, so it doesn't, I don't think it says to do this in the instructions, but I went ahead and rounded off all of the edges on the interior wood pieces of the camper to take off any of the sharp edges. Just because when you're sleeping, you don't want to bang your arm or your leg or something against a sharp wooden edge on the inside of the camper. So just go ahead and round them off.
The door frames, the inside
Yeah,
of
the door frames and the shelf gets rounded, but the doors, like the frames around the doors, I just rounded those off too, so.
All right. Eyebrows, CA tack from middle to front and then middle to back. Yeah, I dreaded putting the eyebrows on. I was looking at the flimsy wood and thinking this is going to be a major pain to get this flat piece of plywood to bend to shape and hold on and stay. And we found out that it really wasn't that hard once you looked at it. So we worked as a team. You got to have two people, and we used a CA glue to tack it.
I can't imagine trying to do that as one person.
No, there's no way.
Yeah.
So if you find your front edge and work it to the middle, and then start CA glue tacking it from the middle to one end, and then from the middle to the other end, it'll hold that shape long enough for you to get the wood fillet and fiberglass applied. And once the fiberglass is applied, then after 3 or 4 hours you can take and cut off the excess fiberglass and just kind of neaten it up. You're going to end up sanding it later anyway.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to skip those two because
Okay.
I didn't work on that.
Okay.
So when we were mounting the camper to the trailer, we punch marked through the bolt holes on the bottom.
Yeah, the
of
mounting brackets.
the mounting brackets of the trailer up through the bottom of the camper. So you wanna do that to establish exactly where to drill, and then drill, fill, drill.
Yeah. I did all the trailer work. We bought the Trailex, or she brought the Trailex trailer on my recommendation. I looked at the Harbor Freights and the other places you could get trailers, and the front corners on those trailers had no real support. So to build up support and all that, you're adding weight to the camper. didn't seem like a very secure mode of transportation for the camper. So she got the Trailex trailer, and I spent about 8 hours assembling that. The big thing with that is to make sure that your pieces are squared and all your bolts are torqued, and just go through it. But then when you get to the wiring, all trailer wiring, and I hate this about trailer wiring, they use those pinch connectors and all that, and after 3 or 4 or 5 years, in the weather, they start to decay and
Wiggle loose
and rust, and then you got broken wire and trailer lights that don't work. So I went ahead and put the wires together, hooked the lights up, soldered the wires, heat shrink the connections, and that way the trailer lights is not going to fail because of a mechanical connection. I think that's where's it?
Those
Yep.
two.
Those two there. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
So you saw us. So in the book, it gives you measurements for where to put the block for the galley latch, the hasp latch on the lid and everything. We just went ahead and mounted, and then marked where we mounted the latch, and then marked where that fell on the back to determine where to put the block, rather than trying to measure. And we did that because we ended up having to change the dimensions of the back of the camper because we had to cut the galley flat.
Yeah.
So that's why we did that. You may not have to do that, but we found that was a really easy way to get it in the right place, was just to fit it that way.
We epoxy resined a back plate to it, cut out about 5" by 7" plate, and mounted that on the inside, and then we screwed from the inside out to the back of the block. We also epoxy resin that in, and then you could have that secured, because there's no way to put a clamp on that for that resin to harden and dry. So we use wood screws from the inside and pulled it tight, and it's secure on there. And then once that was done, we turned around and brought the lid down, brought the hasp down, and figured out exactly where the mating end of that hasp went and screwed it on.
Yeah. So I think the last thing that's the last thing we got. We got 2 minutes. If you do things out of order from the instruction book, just be mindful of any upcoming steps in the book that may be impacted.
Yeah.
And I think that's really it. Just be mindful that if you're gonna skip a step for now because I've got resin ready to go, I might as well go ahead and resin something. Just keep in mind that may impact something else later on.
Yeah.
So.
Also, if you find yourself in a lull where you say, well, we got that major part done and we got to wait for it to dry, the fiberglassing the hinges is a good little project that you can work. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of little things that can be done that take up time that you can do. If you at the end of the day say, well, that only took an hour. Well,
Yeah.
So I guess the next thing to do is kind of give you an overview of the tools we used, and we'll call it good.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for listening. We're going to go over the tools now.
Yeah, you are.
Okay. All right, Dad.
Hi.
Hi. What tools did we use?
Oh, all this. And then some.
All of this.
Yeah, I guess one of the most important things you need is this.
Instructions.
Destructions. So, set of hand tools, wrenches, screwdrivers, sockets. Those are always good to have in any project. Also a good set of shears for cutting fiberglass. Nice coping saw. I don't care how accurate your measuring devices are. If you have a problem reading them, like I do, it seems to become a problem. But you need measuring devices, a hacksaw, 100-mile-an-hour tape, painter's tape, the baggies we mentioned earlier, the rubber gloves, nitrate gloves. Also, plastic for covering things you don't want resin on. We talked about the butcher paper.
Okay.
Okay. Square, wood pencils, scribes, marking devices, razor knife, flat edge razor. Hey, these magnetic cups and magnetic strips.
Those are very handy.
They are very handy. Razor blades, of course. Gotta have something to pump resins in this tight areas. All of the, what are these things called?
Plastic scrapers.
Well, I bought a set of these from CLC Boat, and then I cut some out of Luan and used them. So I've still got the original set that if I need them ever again, I've got them. I can. It's a pattern. Okay. Got the adhesive for the ceiling fan and the muffin fans and all the
exterior stuff that needs waterproofed.
Yep. Got a lot of clamps.
A lot. How many clamps?
There's 2.
2 clamps. Okay, got it. You need 2 clamps.
I got
Big wooden clamps.
big wooden clamps. Also, you've seen that we take pieces of wood and we use wood to extend the reach of clamps while we're doing this. Lots of denatured alcohol for cleanup. You got your CA glue and hardener. Chip brushes.
Oh, that was another tip.
Cutting off.
Cut the ends off the chip brushes.
Shorten them up.
Makes it a lot easier to spread the epoxy around without losing brush bristles.
Box of rags. Got rollers. Paint trays.
Epoxy specific rollers.
Yeah.
Make sure you get those.
Now this one here it even says good for epoxies.
I don't know if it'll focus on that, but make sure you get the ones that say specifically epoxy.
Yeah, because all the others want to fall apart. The
Yeah.
epoxy starts to harden and it tears them up. Personal protective gear. Got your goggles, and your face mask, hearing protection, respirators, and where are we at? Okay. Good rubber bang bang. Sandpaper, 220, 120, and 80 grit. Sanding blocks. Tie wraps are good. And a nice long drill bit if you have to get the hinges, because once they're installed, you can't get a drill up there at a squared angle. Assorted hole saws and
Paddle bits.
Drill bits, router bits, extension cords, a good drop light. Oh, and most importantly, music.
What is it? What is it?
Boombox.
The boombox.
The boombox. Alright, as you can see here, got a small handheld router, orbital sanders, multi-purpose cutter, soldering iron we used, a flat sander or a mounted sander, got the jigsaw, screwdrivers, pliers and stuff for cutting electrical wire and doing electrical work, heat shrink, electric wire. Got a cutting blade for your grinder, the Dremel, jigsaw.
With tape on the jigsaw.
Oh yeah,
Tape on the jigsaw.
tape on it.
The drill.
A vise for holding things. And I use this angle finder to get the angles for the rods for the door. Underneath here you'll see that there's
You got the big cushions.
the big cushions. 2 nice sawhorses, a wet dry vac, some heaters for the winter, some fans for the summer,
Table saw,
and you know we don't have the table
the
saw
drill
here.
press.
And the drill press, table saw, drill press. I can't think of anything else we used. We use anything else?
I don't think we did.
No.
I think we might have used a rasp once or
Oh
twice.
yeah, we used your miter saw over there.
Oh, okay. Miter saw.
Oh, one your grandpa gave you.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. If there's anything else, sorry we forgot it. Be interested to hear your comments also, and let us know if you try mounting the hinges before you cut the doors out. And this is the first time we've ever done anything like this, so it's not the definitive right way or wrong way. It's just the way we did it. So good luck, and I'd be interested to see what your projects look like. So with that being said, say bye, Rennie.
Bye.
Bye bye.